taken from a time machine and just dropped off now. Like you hear obvious influences that the artist has lived through different eras and studied, listened to different eras of music. So I really dug it.
Hello and welcome to Eclectic Selections, the human music recommendation service. My name is Liam Flanagan and I will be your musical guide, recommending you the best in music wherever and whenever it was released. You're currently watching the Pay It Forward series, which is where I give a recommendation to our monthly guest curator and they tell me how they felt and thought about it. So let's go over now to either my past or my future self and that guest and see what they said. I'd like you all to welcome back Jay's own, the Pay It Forward recommendation. So Jay, I sent you a recommendation. It's called El Almento by Simafunk. Yeah, so let's hear your thoughts.
I was digging it, man. That what I like about the first song was featuring George Clinton. It had like a George Clinton cameo.
Yeah.
I know they had like a Lupe cameo and some other stuff, but the track with George Clinton, I really liked. What I really like about this is that funk is kind of like hip hop in that harkens back to another era, but like when it was new. So a lot of artists in the genre try to do a modern copy of what it was when it started. So like in hip hop, you kind of have like the whole revivalist thing of the 90s where it's like 2022, but everybody's trying to be full on 90s, like with their production. It's like, that's already been done before and done to the best of its ability during the quote unquote, the golden era, like the late 80s or 90s. It's one thing, that style is timeless, but then people try to copy it rather than take the best elements of it and let it inspire something new, which in any genre, in order for it to grow, we're all inspired by the greats earlier in the genre. And then, but we try to mix it with modern, technology or just all the information we have with us at our disposal to try to create something new and push the genre forward. Yeah. And I think in hip hop, a lot of people get stuck in nostalgia and they want to make something that sounds exactly like it came out then. At least in my experience, I met a lot of artists who were really on the revivalist tip. This artist is that you hear influences from stuff, but then it doesn't sound like it's trying to be a P-Funk show in 1976, but you hear P-Funk in it.
I heard like P-Funk in it, like because he uses quite a lot of the sort of syndrome sort of stuff. I kind of heard a bit of like Neptunes and maybe like even stuff, some 80s funk in there too.
Oh yeah, like I was about to say the Rick James type of stuff, like even the early Kashif productions and things like that. Like a lot of that vibe from the early 80s, you hear it in there, but it doesn't sound like it's taken from a time machine and just dropped off now. Like you hear obvious influences that the artist has lived through different eras and studied, listened to different eras of music. So I really dug it. Because with Do Rights, that's what we try to do. We always say we're inspired by 70 years worth of music, but we're a 2020 band.
That's definitely part of the reason I was like, this could be like a good one, because this is a young guy. I think he's in his like mid-20s or something from Cuba. Yeah. And he's trying to bring it. He's acknowledging the history. He's getting people like George Clinton involved. So he's talking about all this Cuban music and like how there's similarities or the ways in which the two things like overlap nicely. So he's definitely given it a new twist. Yeah, he's kind of taking all these elements and he's finding ways to do his own thing with them. And I also thought of you when I heard that, because you did the you played with Eddie Palmieri, right?
I did.
Harlem River Drive.
Do Rights did, yeah. Rock Rubber 45. Shout out to Bobito Garcia. He's been there throughout my entire career, a launching pad for change. He's always been one of the first people to embrace whenever I was doing something new, whether it was coming out as a hip hop artist or when I was a basketball, I was a sports writer for a while in between the music. And my first article I ever wrote was for his magazine. And then when I started playing drums, he had me doing the music, drumming for the score of the Stretch and Bob documentary.
Oh, wow, right. Cool.
Yeah, I have drums on there. And then when the Do-Rights came out, he was a fan, and he hired us to be the backing band and the primary composers for that song, and to have Robert Glasper, Eddie Palmieri, DJ Rob Swift, Maria Ramos, DJ Drez, all of them on the track. But I mean, again, it's the Latin funk thing. Like, Bob is from uptown. That's part of his DNA.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing as like the artist you suggested. Like, we wanted to kind of capture that whole Jimmy Castor just begun b-boy uptown thing, but then we wanted to make it modern, maybe not modern as in clean sound, but modern in that we acknowledge that other music has come out between then and now, and we added, like, there is hip hop in there with Rob Swift doing the cuts, and the way that I put drums in my mixes, I have them up front. That's a hip hop thing. Most hip hop with drum breaks, they would take drums from funk records, but the drums were kind of usually panned to one side, and they were just kind of in the track. And then they would pan it from one side and put it up front in stereo in the hip hop, like right up the middle. Paul C used to do that on records where drums were hard, like this Kool & the Gang record, the drums are hard pan. So like back then, it wasn't like focus on the drums. The drums were there. Hip hop took them and put them to the front. So being that all of that happened throughout history, for us to exist as a funk band, we're obviously going to be inspired by what happened to funk drumming through hip hop. So, we're not in 1969 making records. We're in 2022. So all the music we that's our template. But then all the music that happened in between, there were developments, and they're gonna come into our music because we lived through those developments, just like that art. And you're saying he's young, in his 20s or whatever, but he knows this older music, but he's still a younger Gen Z guy. You know what I'm saying? So he has Lupe Fiasco, I noticed, on the record, which is another generation from George Clinton. So it's like,
like some of those tracks are like there's 3 generations, like 2 or 3 generations working together, and this lad is clearly, he's so young, like he might not even have been that old when Lupe's first album came out.
There you go. Saying
so it's great that he's embracing these things from across hip hop and funk history.
It's like that. Like, you don't want to stay stagnant, man. Like, I mean, nostalgia is cool for a little bit, but then you have to take the nostalgia and mix it with something else to create something new. Like Do-Rights, like the drums on a Do-Rights record might sound like they're from the late 60s, but then Pablo's guitar pedals are new wave, like from the 80s, because he plays in Tom Tom Club. He's a punk. So he has a lot of 80s new wave stuff going on. Yeah,
definitely. Like I hear that in a lot of his modulation pedals, that the choruses and whatnot, that's a very 80s sound.
Yeah, so the drums might sound like a 70s Jack DeJohnette record or a 60s kind of Kool & the Gang record, but then the pedals and stuff are from the 80s or the 90s, and then there'll be like I'll use fusion jazz chords. Like, we're picking from all the music that came from
it's a fusion
65 to the 2000s. We were inspired by it all. We don't want to be a retro soul funk band. We want to be a 2022 funk band that has a wide musical range of musical influences from all the decades, from the 50s to the present.
And I honestly think that's part of the reason I connected with it, because while there's stuff that's very revivalist that I've come around to more, and this is maybe just getting older thing.
Right.
I think you guys' stuff is just so potent because you're not trying to sound like a pure Motown record or a pure James Brown record or a Meters record or something. You're taking your favorite bits from different things and trying to make a new fusion out of these existing influences.
And that's the only way to push a genre forward, because you want them talking about us in 20 years. You don't want people talking about stuff that's 60 years old when they're looking at artists who are 20 years old. You want to keep the things going. Like, we're all influenced by things, but you don't want to. Our whole thing was, don't be a revivalist group. Don't make 2 albums that sound the same. And that was kind of the overall theme that I heard. There's funk, there's Latin funk and all that other stuff in there, but then it's not like we're going to try to beat Mongo Santa Maria note for note. You know what I mean? Like, or Ray Barretto, note for note. It's not like that.
Now that we've had this conversation, actually, I picked a really good one because I think yeah, you've drawn those parallels, and I totally see that while you might not sound the same, you've taken a similar approach to mixing all these things up.
Right, exactly.
Thank you to you all for watching this video. If you want to support Eclectic Selections and join our community, there are various ways you can do so. Number one, you can comment, like, and subscribe right here on YouTube. This helps this video get noticed and helps other music lovers like yourself discover great music. Number two, you can follow us over on Twitter or even sign up to our newsletter. Here you'll get all the latest news, extra recommendations, plus some humorous and informative conversation. And the final way is to join our Discord community where you can chat with other music lovers and myself. We can talk about music and other topics too. All the links to support Eclectic Selections are below in the description of this video. Thanks again for watching, and until next Thursday, keep it eclectic.